What's going on, everybody? This is Paul, your hip-hop relationship and recovery coach, and I'm bringing to you again another episode of this God-given podcast, Kick Your Butt Out. As usual, before I get off into the content of today, I have to say what I always say, and I'm going to say it like this again. Please hear this with your mind so that you can incorporate this thing into your life and make the changes that needs to be made so that we can walk in the greatness that God has put inside each and every one of us. That is, if you looking for a butt, and in the words of Eric Thomas, 120% is going to be that easy to find one. Thank you so much. All right. Today's episode of Kick Your Butt Out, it was inspired by a series of things that I've been experiencing, and I just wanted to bring these things to light because a lot of times we really don't know what we're doing or what we're not doing, or even the harm, until someone actually brings it to the light. And I want to say this, like I had said in one of my other podcasts or one of the other episodes, I was told many years ago that when God gives you a message to give, it's usually for you first. So this thing applies to me as well. And I want to have some conversation around this because we need to start, whether it's conversations with me or with other motivators, other speakers, other spiritual men, women, and young and old who are around the world trying to make a difference. We need to start having these real conversations and working through some real solutions so that we can make a change. Because if we don't, if this thing continues going like it's going now, we're going to be in trouble in our near future. There's a scripture in the Bible where God says this: the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Pray to the Lord of the harvest that he will send laborers into the harvest. And we need to do that. We need to, if we've told God that we want to be a laborer, let's labor. Let's labor. If we've said, God, use me, and I know many people who say that, God, use me. If you've asked God or invited God to use you, let's allow him to use us in the way that he wants to use us so that we can change this world. Because again, if you go and do a poll, right? And I don't even know why I'm going here, but except about the Holy Spirit. If you do a poll of all of the dysfunction that's going on in this world, in houses, in our homes, in our marriages, in our relationships, in our businesses, in our careers, in our jobs, if you did a poll of the people who are messy, I'm gonna keep it 100. I'm not gonna sugarcoat this. Who are messy, and I'm not saying this from I'm not saying this from a look at you standpoint. Lots of us, this applies to me as well. If you did a poll of the people who are messy or going through a whole lot of mess unnecessarily today, and ask them, have they had Jesus come into their lives as their Lord and Savior? Have they invited Jesus into their lives as their Lord and Savior at some point in their lives? The majority of them will say, yeah. And it behooves me that many of us out here are believers and children of God, yet we're living just like the world. I'm bothered now. All right, so I'll be talking about today domestic violence, child abuse, and racial violence. Again, one of the reasons why I'm going to talk about this is because many of us tend to minimize or flat out deny that we are being domestically violent against our significant others, that we are exercising child abuse against our children, or we're showing some racial violence against one another because we don't do certain things that constitute, yep, that's violence, yep, that's violence. And the minimization has caused me to title today's episode, but I didn't. Yes, you did. All right. So, like I said, we tend to minimize or flat out deny that we've been abusive or violent because most of the time it's not physical. However, let me help you out with something. And I'm going to start with our relationships with our spouses, right? When we're disrespectful to our spouses, when we say hurtful things to our spouses, yes, you hit them. Yes, you kicked them. Yes, you spit on them. Yes, you punched them, whatever forms of domestic violence from a physical standpoint that goes on, you did that and even more because here's how you hit them, here's how you kicked them, here's how we spit on them, here's how we punched them, here's how we slapped them, here's how we pulled their hair or whatever it may be. We pull their hair from a spiritual, mental, and emotional standpoint. Yeah, it might not have been physical, but let me say this to you all. Over my life, I have been verbally abused to the point where there were many times where I said, and this is crazy, however, this is how I felt. The verbal abuse was so hurtful, and it cut so deep, and it kicked so hard, and it spit so hard that I used to say, I would rather be hit with a bat than to be talked to and spoken to that way, because that physical pain would go away quicker than that emotional, that verbal, that spiritual, and that mental pain that you are exercising on me or against me. So when we are cussing at our significant others and our significant others politely ask us, please don't cuss at me, and we continuing to do it, you basically kicking them. You're basically spitting on them. You're basically punching them. You're basically pulling their hair, or whatever forms of physical violence from a domestic standpoint that happens is just the same, if not worse, right? Here's another way we can be domestically violent against our significant others. Like I said, but I didn't. Yes, you did, right? When we're hollering at our significant others and they ask us, hey, Tom, can you bring your voice down? Can you talk to me with your inside voice? And we continue to raise our voice against what our significant other asked us. That's violence. That's just like kicking them, just like punching them, it's just like slapping them. And I've been guilty of that on many occasions. I remember my wife and I, a few years back, we had to work through me with my tone, because I'm from Chicago. You know, we talk loud, right? We talk loud. Didn't mean any harm in many of those occasions when I was talking to her. However, that's the way she perceived it, as me hollering at her and asked me. And many times I fought against it. Like, I'm not, this is the way I talk, this, that, or the other. And the reality of it is I was actually being violent towards her. Yes, I was. I was being domestically violent towards my significant other. And again, you don't have to put your hands on your significant other to be domestically violent. And like I said, in many times, that verbal, spiritual, mental, and emotional pain is way more, it lasts way longer, and it cuts deeper than the physical ones. I know for me, from my experiences, that's the way it was. When we're consistently criticizing or critiquing everything that our significant others do, when we're nitpicking, that's basically being domestically violent against our significant others. But I didn't hit. Yes, you did. Yes, we did. Right? When we withhold affection, as a form of punishment, or as a, as a form of punishment, that's abuse. When we become bossy with our significant others, or dominant against our significant others, that's domestic violence. I'm going to keep this 100. Yeah, yes, you did. It's just like hitting them, right? In many cases, when our significant others, our husbands or wives, will come to us with a vision or a dream that they desire to do, and we knock that dream down, or don't support that dream, or don't support that vision, or don't get on their side, or don't pray with them, or don't pray for them, that's domestic violence. That's a form of domestic violence. Yes, you did. Oh, but I didn't hit. Yes, you did. Because if I got a vision or a dream that God put in me, if I got a calling that God put in me, and I come to my significant other, or my significant other has a dream or a vision, and either one of us flat out pretty much treat each other like, oh, that's a nightmare. That's violence. Because what if this is what God has called you to, and the person who's supposed to support you the most isn't supporting you? That's hurtful. That's harmful. Again, the physical pain will go away quicker and easier than that type of pain or abuse. So in many ways, when we give our significant others the silent treatment, that's a form of domestic violence. We have to understand and stop minimizing or flat out denying that we have not been domestically violent against our significant others when we're doing things that's spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and verbally abusive. That's violent. I could go on and on and on about some of the things that we do, and we don't think that it, because we didn't physically hit or spit or kick our significant other, we deny that we have practiced domestic violence against them. And I'm here to say, yes, we did. And so we have to change that. We have to, if your significant other came to you with a vision or a dream, if your significant other came to you with an idea, do what you can to support that. If they ask you to stop cussing or hollering, work on stop cussing and hollering. Stop being demanding. Stop trying to be dominant and bossy and support your significant other. That's what we're here for. Marriage is about a bond. The Bible talks about in Ephesians, when it talks about marriage, it talks about a husband supposed to treat his wife as he treats himself. because his wife is basically him. And that's vice versa. That's vice versa. It's just not for the husband. It's for the wife as well. And it talks about the wife supposed to respect her husband. And in many of our situations, and I'm not saying that any of us are intentionally being evil or hateful towards our significant others, but under the same token, some of the things that we do or don't do or say or don't say, it's violent. So, people, let's have some conversations around that. Let's see what we can do to make some changes in these areas so that us and our significant others won't have to worry about feeling like we are violent towards one another. I'll put it to you like this. We and our significant others have to feel safe enough to come home, have to want to come home after we get off work, not dread going home, or not dread your significant other coming in from work, not having an idea like who am I going to get today when I get home. We have to stop this, because that's domestic violence, that's abuse. All right. The second subject on this, the second group of people on this subject that I want to talk about, let me put it like that, is child abuse. Child abuse does not necessarily mean that you physically beat or whatever it is to your children. It does not mean that all the time. It's not limited to that. But I didn't, yes we did. One of the ways that we are violent towards our children is when we want our children to follow the dreams that we have for them. That's a form of domestic violence. I mean, that's a form of child abuse. Because what we want them to be, what they want to be, or what God's purpose for them may not be the same thing. And a lot of kids grow up with a lot of pressure on them. A lot of them grow up with a lot of pressure on them from their parents, because their parents are saying, this is who I want you to be when you grow up. And like I said, a lot of times that's not what their vision is. That's not what they feel like their purpose is. That's not even what God has called them to be. And you have kids ending up depressed, anxiety, suicide ideation, drug addiction, running away, you name it, all of these crazy things in the name of, because my parent is trying to get me to be something or someone that I'm not. Now, let me break this. Let me say this to y'all. And if you might get mad at me or not, I don't care. I'm going to keep this 100. If you were born, watch this. If you were born with all of the male organs and you can't carry a child inside of you, you're a man. And if you were born with all the female organs and you can't put a child in a person, you're a woman. So I'm not saying that, hey, this child was supposed as a male and is supposed to be a female, and you're not supporting that, or this child was supposed to be a female and ended up being no, God don't make mistakes. If he made you a male, that's what you are. If he made you a female, that's what you are. So I said it. Let's move on. Okay. When there's sometimes in our lives that, or in our children's lives, they came to us with a dream, right? And we didn't support that. They were doing some things, again, because it didn't line up with what we thought that they should be or what we wanted them to be. And we didn't support that. That's a form of child abuse. That is a form of child abuse. Another form of child abuse is, and you didn't have to hit them. We didn't have to put a hand on them, but we abused them because of the lack of support. And then we wonder why our children find the answer in the comfort zones in drugs. They find the answer in the comfort zones in their peers who are not doing healthy things with their lives as well. This is one of the reasons why they run, or children run to all of the negative things. This is some of the reasons why children end up committing suicide, unfortunately. This is some of the reasons why, because the place that children are supposed to feel the most supported and the most safe, unfortunately, it's not. But I didn't. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Let me be transparent and tell a story from my personal experience. When I was in Chicago, I was in a rap group back in the early 80s. This rap group wasn't one of those rap groups that practiced all of this negative stuff that was going on. In fact, we had a single that we put out. It was called No Drugs. So we was against drugs, we was against teenage pregnancy, we was against gangs, we was against high school dropout. And one of the reasons why we were popular in the city of Chicago and we were doing many shows all over the city of Chicago is because the mayor of Chicago, the then mayor of Chicago, had saw one of our performances and said, we need to sign these guys up for the Youth Intervention Network. And we were signed to that network and we went all over the city to speak to the youth. So our raps were to bring children out of the madness into the greatness that's inside of them, not the other way around. My mother, who was then, she worked at DePaul University in the accounting department, in the payroll department or whatever, and she actually was going to school for accounting as well. She felt that I should be doing something else. However, what I was doing there, it felt like a sense of belonging. It felt like a sense of accomplishment. It felt like a sense of purpose because we were making a difference, right, in the lives of many of the youth in Chicago at that time. We even had grabbed a couple, three of them were young that was in our group. And they're doing okay to this very day. And this was in 85, 86, 87. So anyway, my mother came home from work one day, and she came to me and she said, you know, I was having a conversation with, you know, my coworkers and colleagues, and we were talking about what our children are doing, you know, in terms of career paths and all of that kind of stuff. She said I had to tell my colleagues that my child is a rapper. And she said it from a perspective of dissatisfaction for what I was doing. And my mother didn't hit me, but that was heavy. That was really heavy. And listen, y'all, please. My mother is a good woman, a good mother. She did what she could with what she knew at the time, and she felt like she was doing the right thing. I get and understand that. I want to make sure that you all are clear about that. Please don't send me no hate mail about my mother, because my mother wasn't a non-caring mother. My mother cared about her children. So anyway, but that statement was worse than any other form of discipline my mother had ever disciplined me with. that statement put me in the place of, I started to give up and let go at that time. But shortly after that, and my mother didn't put the decisions and the choices that I made in my past, and I'm not blaming my mother for any of the decisions or choices that I made. I'm just talking about that particular situation. Really, it did something to me mentally, emotionally, verbally, and even spiritually. So even though we may not have physically abused our children, and my mother never did that to us, she basically abused me and didn't know it, because I know she didn't do it she wasn't intentional. Didn't know it, but she abused me from a spiritual, mental, verbal, and emotional standpoint. Because like I said, I started to really, I just kind of gave up after that, and shortly my life kind of changed. So anyway, I was really uncomfortable talking about that. However, I just wanted you all to know that we can be physically abusive without being physically abusive. You know, like I said, some of the wounds and the scars that has happened to me over the years, they're internal and not physical. So anyway, I'm gonna get off of that. Lastly, I want to mention the last thing I want to mention from a child abuse standpoint is, if we aren't intentional about making our homes or ourselves as parents, if we aren't intentional about making ourselves a safe place for our children to come and have conversations with or to talk to, yes, we did. That's a form of child abuse. We're abusing our children. Because here's why I say this. Many children who are dying young, some of the reason why they end up making the choices that they made is partly because they didn't have an atmosphere where they could actually really go and talk to their parents about what was really going on. So they got their education and their conversation from the streets, from the outside world. And we all know and understand that has never been a helpful place for us to get our information. I'm for one, I'm a product of that. My mother had to go to school and work so that, to give us a better life. And I followed up behind my older brother. I followed up behind people who weren't making healthy choices at those times. So anyway, we have to make our homes and our places, our homes and ourselves, a safe place for our children to be able to come and have conversation. It doesn't make a difference if they're 5 or 50. It still they have to always know that mom or dad is always a safe place for me to come and have conversation and talk about whatever it is that I need to talk about. So there we go with the child abuse. And again, I'm not saying anybody within the sound of my voice was intentional, evil, malicious, or otherwise about the things that we have done to our significant others, our wives, our husbands, or our children. Not saying that any one of us was like that. However, some of the ways that we abused or was violent towards our significant others and our children, it wasn't physical. It was every other way. So, yes, we did. The third one that I want to talk about is racial violence. And you're going to be surprised at the angle that I come from. The other day, I was in my car and I pulled up to a stoplight. I was in the right lane, the right turn lane, and there was another car in the left turn lane, in the far left. So we were both turning left, but he was in the left, I was in the right. And he had his window down, his windows were down, beautiful California evening, windows were down. He was blasting his music. He wasn't African American, he wasn't a black man. But the song that he was playing in his car was, the hook line was, what was it? For my N-word, for my N-word, for my N-word. I don't ever say the word, because I hate it. I passionately hate the N-word. So for my N-word, for my N-word, that's how I went. That was the melody. For my N-word, for my N-word. And I was like, wow. I thought like, wow. We have allowed ourselves to be in the place and in the time where we have called ourselves prettying up this word so much that anybody and everybody can say it, listen to it, practice it, and all it is a form of communication or conversation or entertainment. People, the N-word is never going to be pretty. I'm gonna say that again. The N-word is never going to be pretty. It's almost like, to say that the N-word would ever be pretty is almost like saying that the devil is nice now and he loves all of us. We understand that that's never going to happen, right? The exact same thing with this N-word. One of the reasons why I don't get off into the Black Lives Matter movement as bad as I want to, watch this. When a white person or somebody that's not black kills a black person, we're on the protest lines, we're looting, we're burning stuff up, and we're doing all of this stuff and making sure that we point out or want to prosecute the person who did whatever they did to this black man or this black woman, right? However, but when we leave those, lots of black people, when we leave those protest lines, we go right back into our communities and we shoot and kill one another. We go right back into our communities and we gang bang against one another. We go right back into our communities and we sell dope to one another. We go right back out into our communities and we prostitute our women. We go right back into our communities and we leave our children, and all of them are black. Here's another thing. Again, like I said, when someone else kills a black man or a black woman, we all up in the roar. But when we go into the hood and the black man kills somebody, everybody got on their no snitch t-shirts. Don't nobody know nothing. We see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. When a black man kill a black man. I remember back in the 90s, I think it was in the 90s. It was a time in America where studies were showing that high blood pressure, it was at a time where high blood pressure was the #1 killer of African American people, black men, black women, right? At this particular time, they said that black on black crime or black on black murder was at a higher rate than blacks who were dying from high blood pressure. And the high blood pressure rates were extremely high. I'm gonna go on and even say this. in all of the years that I unfortunately used drugs, 30 years, I have never bought drugs from any other race of people but blacks. They didn't put the gun in my hand, up to my head. I did it, absolutely. But I'm just talking about, I just want to point out this black on black violence, this racial violence. When in the day, back home in Chicago, my brothers and I, on many occasions, had to fight. And we had to fight because we weren't into the gang banging stuff in Chicago. And we had to fight the gang bangers on many occasions to go to school or to come home, right? They were all black. They weren't white, they were all black. Same color as me. When I'm talking about, and we're talking about all of it, like we love each other as blacks, that we haven't done these things, these detestable things to blacks, like hang them from trees, skin them alive, burn them alive, shoot them, whip them, rape them, castrate them, cut off hands and cut off feet in the name of the N-word. But when we continue to call each other that and allow people to call us that, all of our ancestors who those detestable things happen to is just the same as we doing it to them as well. Many of our people, many of black men and women were killed so we won't have to be called the N-word. And we running around here calling each other the N-word like it's pretty. As a relationship coach, one of the things that I learned in being educated is that we teach people how to treat us. And we're teaching people how to treat us. They treat us the way we treat ourselves. So we can't be, listen, it is not to say it's okay for them to do what they're doing. But what I am saying is we continue to do this N-word thing. Yes, we did. Yes, we are. We making it okay for them to continue to do what they're doing to us as well. So if you black man or you black woman who's listening to this podcast, when we talking about racial violence, I'm not talking about no other race but yours, because you doing it to your race more than anybody on this day, especially when I pull at a stoplight and I listen to a man in his car listening to a song and he's not even our color. And he jamming to this song. Something wrong with that picture. I'm not even mad at him. I'm mad at us. And another thing, and then I'm gonna shut this down. Another thing, I'm appalled by us running around here talking about what they doing to us and we doing it to ourselves more than ever. Three popular rappers, all black. J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, and what's the boy name from Canada? Jesus Christ. Drake. All of these dudes are battling one another. And if you listen to their songs, it is detestable. So much in that, and this hate, right? Practice against each other in these songs. And then we wonder why we get treated the way that we get treated by all the other races. They don't take us serious because we don't take ourselves serious. But what's his name? J. Cole, I admire that brother because one of the things that he did while he was on tour, in concert, he got on stage and said, listen, all that stuff that I just did, said about Kendrick Lamar, that song and all that was wrong. I'm denouncing all of that stuff right now. That's my brother. I love him. And I want to publicly make an apology and an amends for what I did. Or the things that I've said about and to that man, right? You know what happened? I'm obviously on social media because of what I do. I'm going through my feed and I'm watching all of the black men and women calling him soft and lame because he want to love another black man. But then we wonder why we being killed in alarming numbers by other races. Come on, people. Yes, you did. Yes, you raped our ancestors. You burned our ancestors. You shot our ancestors. You hung our ancestors. You castrated our ancestors. You cut their limbs off. You stole their kids. You raped them. You did all of that when you running around here calling each other that word that they died for. We got to stop this, man. We got to stop this. I'm getting emotional about this, so I think it's time for me to go ahead and end this particular episode. Yes. So we gotta look at the domestic violence that we are doing against our significant others. No, it might not be physical. All these other ways, yes, we did. It's almost like it's just as bad, if not worse, than the physical. Same thing with the child abuse, just as well as it is with the racial violence. Let's have some conversations around this. And then please, let's work from a perspective of these conversations are about how we're going to implement some solutions and change. Because like I said, the N word, it's never going to be pretty. This is Paul, your hip hop relationship and recovery coach. I love everybody out there, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. And like I say always, if you're looking for a butt, it's going to always be easy to find one. Just that simple. I'll see you all later. Post, repost, comment, subscribe. Let's have some conversations. Let's do this thing about this one because I think we can make a difference. I believe we can make a difference. I have faith that we can make a difference. Thank y'all so much. I'll see y'all next time. Peace.